Right, so hello, Mike Moore. Welcome to
Hello.
my podcast, my first podcast ever. I have the opportunity to have you there. That's awesome.
My
So,
pleasure to be here. Thanks for making it.
who are you? Introduce yourself. Who is Mike Moore?
Sure. So Mike Moore, he started out as a kid who really liked throwing things, and my parents were actually surprisingly okay with this. When I was a kid, my favorite game was to take this bouncy ball that was like this big and then throw it in a cabinet as hard as I could, and then try to catch it. And the cabinet had all sorts of like little pits and all sorts of little weird things on it. So it was actually kind of difficult. And I would do this for hours. And my parents were happy that I was occupied for this long, and they didn't care that much about the cabinet. So they thought this was a pretty good trade-off. So that's how it started. And then I like pitched back when I played softball and baseball, and I just really liked throwing things.
Right,
And at a tennis camp, I was introduced to juggling, and I took to it because, I love throwing things.
right. I think every juggler started juggling by a ball sport. Everyone
Mm.
noticed they're better with this type of sport. Maybe not with their feet or anything. They noticed they're like really good at maybe basketball, volleyball. So yeah, they got introduced for juggling. It's awesome. So what inspired you to juggle out of tennis the tennis court?
Sure, yeah. I kind of learned to juggle twice. I think a lot of jugglers have this story where they learned to juggle three balls and then later on they were like, "Ah, but juggling can actually be a serious thing."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely one of those. I learned to juggle at a tennis camp just kind of in between matches during a tournament. One of my tennis coaches asked me if I wanted to learn how to juggle and I was like, "Yeah, of course. That sounds great." And I learned that, and then I never thought that there was anything beyond a three ball cascade. Like it never even occurred to my brain that you could juggle four balls. It never occurred to my brain you could like throw something behind your back. I was like, nope, I know how to juggle. That's what juggling is, and I can do it.
Right.
And then in high school, I think in grade nine, maybe in grade 10, um, a friend came up to me and was like, "Hey, Mike, do you want to start a juggling club? You seem like someone who can juggle." And I'm like, what? I seem like someone who can juggle? What does that even mean? But like he was right.
Right.
So yeah, then him and I and a few other friends started a juggling club. And actually, he posts a little bit. His name's Tim Dresser. Tim Dresser is the one who asked me if I wanted to start a juggling club. So we did then, and then we were like enamored by the WJF, or I was enamored
Right.
by the WJF for a while. I was like, oh man, that's so cool. I never really liked 360s, but other than that, I loved the WJF. I thought that was so,
Right.
so cool.
Is that
Um,
the way you got introduced to further than three ball cascade? Is that like your first piece of content of like extra extra juggling more than three balls?
kind of. I didn't really look at videos for the first long time, or for the first probably year or so. You have to understand, this was like 2004, 2005,
Yeah.
and YouTube wasn't really a thing at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Like I think it technically started 2005, but nobody cared for a long time,
Right.
or for a couple years. So there were a couple videos out, but like it was a real pain. You had to go download them, and like nobody wants
Right.
that. I had this janky internet connection that like barely worked. So no, for me it was mostly like learning from people who were at the club, and at the club none of us were any good at all. Like, you go to some juggling clubs and you're like, wow, they have these few
There.
people who are so,
Yeah.
so good,
There's
and they
like
can
one
teach you
king.
anything.
You're looking upward to the one king. You want to get as good as him. You see him doing
Yeah.
360s with five balls. You're like, oh man, I'm never getting there.
Yeah, and we just had nothing like that. So it was kind of sad because we were like trying to learn these things and we're like, "Oh, you can throw over the top? That's amazing." We were like our minds were blown by Mill's mess and whatnot.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was just like nobody knew what we were doing. So the first like 3 or 4 years of my juggling was just slowly getting better, but not really knowing what I was doing. Though I did go to a fest, I think 2 years in, which really shook things up a little bit. I saw Joe Showers there, and yeah, he blew my mind. So that
Yeah.
was cool.
Nice. So, what was your first crush in juggling? What was your favorite style, your favorite thing.
Mm, Let me think about that.
Because I know
It's hard to say.
when I started juggling, like YouTube was like the thing. It was like in lockdown, everyone was on YouTube doing whatever. Imagine maybe I was like looking at whatever video showing a juggler and I was like, wow, that's it. That is crazy. It's more than three ball. Because I remember I learned to juggle. Yeah, same time, two times in my life. First, like when I was like 9, with the I don't know the tissue and stuff.
Oh yeah, the scarves,
Yeah,
yeah.
in PE classes. Yeah, and
Nice.
then in lockdown I saw videos. I was like, I want to do this. So I already had the the knowledge that something better than three ball cascade is a thing. So I started first to then go to there. So yeah, I started with the basic three ball cascade, then like reverse cascade. So I had a lot of fun progressing there. That was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. My first juggling crush was probably like Jason Garfield. He just seemed so cool, so unbeatable.
Right.
So I thought I liked his persona. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh no, he was just so rude and so arrogant." And I always thought it was a funny joke, but a lot of other people didn't think it was a funny joke. So yeah, probably Jason Garfield, and then after that, probably Joe Showers when I saw him live for the first time. That was really big. Um, and then probably 3 or so years into juggling, I met my now wife, Emily, and she became my juggling crush for a long, long time because nobody knows how good Emily is at juggling. When I first met her, she was doing 5 ball or 5 clubs, 7 balls,
Right.
and like she was just this like little tiny woman on across a field throwing clubs. She was doing 5-3 with the fives behind the back and it was like holy cow.
That's
So
so cool.
so yeah, she completely changed how I thought about juggling, and then we started a juggling club in university. But yeah, she was you said before like you go to a juggling club and there's that king that you aspire
Mhm.
to. Emily was my king or queen, I guess.
Right.
And so yeah, she was crazy good. She lent me a bunch of IJA DVDs, and I'd say that's where I went from being like a someone who tried to juggle a lot to someone who actually understood what juggling could
Mm.
be and had someone that could actually help get me to where I wanted to go. So Emily was easily the most influential person for my juggling.
I don't think Emily showed off so much stuff on the internet. Because
That's right.
the only thing I saw from her was the slapback tutorial with you. That was awesome. That
Yeah.
was so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, and even that like slap chops, like that's a hard pattern. And a lot of people just like
Right.
see that tutorial as kind of a funny joke, which I think it is.
I
It was made to
tried.
be
I
a funny
I
joke.
found it funny. I was like, yeah, I should try it. And never, even now, I cannot do it. It's actually hard. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Emily isn't a big internet juggler. So
Mm,
like she can also do 3 flower sticks, like 3 flower sticks in a
yeah.
reverse cascade pattern. But you'd never know because
Yeah.
she's pretty quiet and private about it.
That's awesome. So, how did you found out about Timoto juggling?
Sure. So Timoto juggling kind of went through, I think back in the day, we would call it patterns juggling.
Right.
So this was largely inspired by Murakami Tsubasa way back when. He had like patterns 1 through 7, 1 through 8. He had that patterns series. And that that was kind of useful because it was a way to differentiate between like if you say you're a 3 ball juggler, people are like, oh, so like body throw, it's either
Right.
like body
Yeah.
throws or you kind of suck. And it's like, no, 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 you can
Yes.
actually have hard things in 3 balls that aren't body throws. And so we needed a word for that. So people started calling it patterns juggling, which wasn't great because like
Everything is
everything,
a
every
pattern. Yeah.
pattern.
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, that was never a fantastic word for it. And
Mm.
I know Lucas Adverse was saying like, hey, in Japan they call that style Temoto. And I was like, okay, and that probably sensitized me I think it was Daiki Utsumi, I think his last name is,
Yes. Yeah.
or his anyway. I get mixed up with first and last names there. Because
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Mm.
so yeah, I think Daiki Utsumi sent me a message and was like, "What do you people, what do English people call this like Murakami style pattern?" And I had to be like,
That's
"We
it.
call them
Murakami style
patterns."
pattern. That's what we call it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he's like, "Oh, well, in Japan we call it temoto, and which means like by the hand." And
Mm.
it's like, okay, that is just so much better a
Makes
name.
way more sense. Yes.
Yeah. And I'll admit that when I started thinking about doing weekly temoto, I have a couple goals here, but like half the point of doing that is to popularize the word temoto because I think it just makes way more sense than everything else. And if we start calling it by that, then like an established genre, and I think that can be really helpful because people can actually say like, "Oh, I'm a temoto juggler," and people will be like, "Oh, okay, I know what that is."
Right. When did you discover that though? Between the juggling club and the weekly tomorrow, how you did discover it in between?
Fairly recently, let's see. Lucas Adverse definitely told me a fair bit before I really, I really got a handle on it. So he probably told me maybe like 4 years ago,
4 years ago.
and then I learned about, I heard about it from Daiki maybe like 2 years ago or something like that. I'm really bad with perceptions of time though, so I might be off
Yeah,
by like a factor of two. Who knows?
maybe. Yeah, because your first trick of the month video was like 5 years ago. Now in 2022, it was 5 years ago, I think, and it
Okay.
was all Timoto.
Yeah.
So you discovered that a while ago, did you?
Well, there's the style of juggling and then there's the name. So like my
Right,
first tricks of the month video, I had never heard of, or I don't think I've ever heard of Teimoto.
right.
Instead, I just thought of it as Murakami style patterns,
Yeah,
and that was good enough.
that's awesome. So now you're a part of the IJA members?
I was. So are you
Oh,
talking about like the organization of it?
yes.
Yeah, so I haven't been for the last year or so, but I
All right.
was on the board of directors for I think 3 years, something like that.
How did you got introduced to that?
That it was kind of like an inevitability. Um,
All right.
if you take the Venn diagram of jugglers and people who are very organized and like to or and who are okay doing bureaucracy or like very detail-oriented work or
Mm,
filling out paperwork, there's not a lot of overlap between those types of people. But
you
I'm
were.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So when I saw the IJ, I first went to my an IJ festival in 2011, and I was like, this is amazing. And then after I went to it a few times, it became clear that like, yes, it's amazing and it's run by volunteers, and eventually I will probably volunteer and be on the board because I'm just the type of person who has those types of skills.
Right.
And it wasn't really because I wanted to drive the IJA in a particular direction. It was more that the IJA needs people who are organized and interested.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
I don't think
there was,
every juggler wanna do bureaucracy and paperwork. Yeah.
yeah, there was one thing that I wanted to drive the IJA in a direction, which was making tutorials.
Yes.
And
That's awesome. I learned a lot of things from IJ tutorials. That was awesome. I liked it.
Nice. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, tutorials have a special place in my heart because a lot of people like juggling as kind of this holistic thing and like juggling and everything juggling involves and touches, which is totally cool and that's great.
Mm.
But for me, I really like juggling, like the act of juggling.
Yes.
The culture of juggling is great, but I like the act of juggling. And as a result, I learned a ton from YouTube tutorials, especially when I was starting out. And I think it's important that people should have the ability to just find YouTube tutorials on maybe not everything,
Yeah.
because, do you really need a YouTube tutorial on 11 balls? At that point, you've kind of like
Yeah.
learned
You
how
figure it
to how
out.
to
Yeah.
learn seven and nine. But who knows? Maybe I can't juggle 11 balls, so maybe I do.
One
But
day.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I also had a special place in my heart for tutorials due to the tutorial competition
Right. Yes.
way back when, because that's how Emily and I got to our first IJA. I I was I did not have a lot of money when I was in undergrad, so I was very hesitant to spend money on things. But Emily was really saying like, "Oh, Mike, you've got to go to an IJA." She'd been to like a handful of IJAs before, like 2006 and 7 and 8,
Right.
I want to say. So she's like, "Mike, you have to go to an IJA. I know it's money, but it's totally worth it." And okay, well, how am I going to do this? Oh, they have this tutorial competition, and like, I like tutorials,
Yes.
so we made a tutorial competition or a tutorial competition entry,
Mm-hmm.
and that year it was strictly vote. There were no judges.
All right. Yeah.
So Emily and I like spammed all of our friends, being like, please vote for us. We were those people.
Ah. Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. But we did indeed wind up winning that by I think a large margin because we really went all in.
Right.
And that brought me to my first IJA. So
Congrats. That's awesome.
thank
So
you.
that's how you got the love for IJA and
Yeah.
the whole organization.
Yeah, yeah, and then I thought, okay, well, it's time for me to work for the IJA because the IJA like completely changed my life, so I felt like I kind of owed them.
Yeah.
So so yeah,
That's awesome. And yeah, tutorials are really cool because it's so easy as a beginner to just see like the Anthony Gattos and the Westpedans of this world and be like, I'm never getting there. I'm gonna just stick my with my 3 ball cascade. But once you get like inverted box tutorial,
hmm
you're closer and closer to get to the best. Then that's how you progress. If you just look up and dream about it instead of working and actually practicing new stuff in betweens, it's awesome. Tutorials are awesome.
yeah. And actually, the idea of seeing someone and being like, oh, I'll never get to there, I had that feeling a lot, especially starting out. But
Mm-hmm.
what really started to change that in me was I saw videos of them when they were younger, or like
Mm.
I'd flip through Juggle magazine. The IJA used to put out a magazine called Juggle magazine, and you'd read about like 7-year-old Wes Peden,
Oh yeah.
and you'd be like, oh, well, let's see. I'm nowhere comparable to like current Wes Peden, but maybe I can strive for 7-year-old Wes Peden. And then once you got 7-year-old Wes Peden, then you're like, oh, maybe I can go for 8-year-old Wes Peden.
That's so funny.
And back when I was a very rounded juggler, like balls, rings, clubs, because that's how I was for the first few years. I had a goal that I would be better than any 10-year-old in history. And so what you just go like, okay, what was Anthony Gatto doing at age 10?
A lot
And
of stuff. Yeah, he was still
and
good. Yeah.
yeah, and what was like Albert Lucas doing at age 10? And then I had to narrow this to, okay, I just care about balls then. Uh, but yeah, like being better than any 10-year-old in history is a pretty attainable goal.
Yeah.
So that was one of my goals early on. It's hard, but it's attainable in my opinion.
But you started so long ago. You had so much time in your childhood to progress for your level now,
Yeah, well, I mean, I only really started juggling when I was 16 or so.
right?
So so even though I had a lot of hand-eye coordination practice before then, compared to a lot of jugglers, I did start kind of late, maybe 15 or 16.
Yeah. Same thing for me. 15 last year,
Mm,
2 years ago. I don't know, something like that. Yes, awesome. And I discovered juggling through probably Taylor tries videos. Probably like a
sure.
lot of people in lockdowns.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
great.
then I discovered the Discord. By the way, y'all
Mm,
should join the juggling Discord. A lot of fun there. And I remember I saw like probably Kimori and Casper talking about hand bounce and being like so iffy about it. It's like something so vague. They were sending like Murakami and prototypes of hand bounce patterns. I was like, this is my thing. I learned like Mills Mess, but this is my thing. So yeah,
uh,
that's how I got introduced to Timoto juggling, and especially by you as well. Like the inverted box tutorial from the IJA tutorial there. That's
mhm,
awesome. Yeah, a lot of fun there.
that's great. And yeah, that Discord channel is wild. Like that's probably the most concentrated three ball talent on
Yes.
any kind, or I'll say skill. Skill's better than talent. On any kind of social media. It's really something. I don't
Right.
know why that over any of the other places, but it has certainly come out to be that way.
All the juggling nerds are there.
Yeah.
No, it's an awesome
Well,
place. It's a
yeah,
lot of fun.
I'll say most of them. I think there are some notable exceptions,
Yeah.
like Dan Barron. Where are you, bud?
Yeah, come here.
Yeah, but and yeah, like even Luna and like GC and whatnot, they just do wild stuff, and they tend not to be like my types of three and four ball juggling, but I can still appreciate them as like, oh my goodness, that's such an interesting way to think about juggling.
And there's so much like I think this Discord is the place where Temoto juggling is being pushed the furthest. There's so much good people concentrated, good people at Temoto there. I learned the most thing talking with like members there, like you, Lucy Alexander, Casper, Kimori as well, KM now.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of cool people there. Yeah. So yeah, how was juggling during quarantine, during COVID? How did it impact your juggling career,
For me, it was pretty good, actually.
right?
Um, yeah, so let's see. Going j just before COVID started, my wife got a new job, and I was a teacher, and I still am a teacher. But once COVID hit, everything became online. So for me, this was this turned out very well for me because the company that I work for took all of the chemistry instructors and we're like, oh, well, we don't need all of the chemistry instructors all the way across Canada anymore. Because if we're doing it online, we can just have a handful of really strong ones doing it.
Mm.
And I happen to have the highest teaching evaluations of anybody across Canada for my role. So I wound up with more work over COVID, which is very rare.
Yeah.
And so that was useful for me because I actually wanted more work at that time as well. And since my wife and I were both 100% work from home, after it became clear that COVID was not going to go away anytime soon,
Mm.
we actually moved. We used to live in a small basement next to the university that I am affiliated with, but that small basement had like 7.5 foot ceilings,
That's
and
awesome.
it, it's pretty, yeah, not a good place to juggle, but it was right near the university, so we could always just go to the university and practice. But then the university locked down, and it was like, oh, well, now we have nowhere to practice. So we moved to like the middle of nowhere.
Especially for
And
us Canadians, in the winters, not a lot of fun to juggle numbers outside.
yeah, it's not a lot of fun to juggle anything outside
No.
in the winter in Canada. So yeah, we moved to the middle of nowhere and we rented a fairly large place, which wasn't too expensive because it was, again, in the middle of nowhere. And that's where I trained for like a year and a half or so.
Is
And
that,
that was great.
for reference, is that the second trick of the month place?
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's looking
So,
it's a cool looking house, yeah.
yeah. And I really kind of struggled with that trick of the month setting at first because they were like, yeah, Mike, you got to submit it in, what was it, February or something like that.
Mm.
And, you know, tricks of the month, they care about production value. So I'm thinking, like, I can't do this outside, and it's during lockdown. So I can't do this anywhere but my house, really.
Yeah.
So this house, which was way bigger than our previous place, probably like 4 times as big. Like we didn't decorate it or anything like that because we knew we weren't going to stay there for very long. So what I did for the video was I just like stacked a bunch of bean bags around the house and we had some house plants. So if you watch actually really carefully, you see that even in different rooms, it's the same house plants. Like I just took the house
Yeah.
plants and put them in the other place because otherwise it just looked so boring. All the walls are just plain white. So yeah, I had to try to find a way to spice that up a little bit.
A good thing I didn't notice until the commentary video you did on it. I was like, yo, that's true. There's the same plants everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. You want to talk about trick of the month videos? Your first one, then your second one.
Sure, sure, yeah. So the first Tricks of the Month video actually happened pretty early in the Tricks of the Month kind of span. I don't remember exactly when Tricks of the Month started, but I think it was less than a year before mine came up, which was cool. I'm a big fan of jumping into projects early, like your podcast. So
Yeah, you're the first one. Nice.
yeah, yeah. So I was trying to think of like what can I show in Tricks of the Month and like where can I shoot this and all that kind of stuff. So for the first one, my idea was that I wanted to combine boxes with levels. And levels meant like your hands are in different positions. So you've got like your base level here and then one level up here. So you can think
Yes.
of inverted box as one hand doing the base level and the
Yeah.
other hand doing the top level, and so on and so on. And dots, of course, is also that kind of thing. So if you watch the Tricks of the Month video through that kind of lens, you see that it starts out as pure boxes and then like slowly gets this hybrid box level type of thing and then ends with pure levels, which to me is four ball dots.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a cool idea. I shot it in the basement of a research lab, so that's why I liked the like grungy pipes all over
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ceiling and whatnot. I thought it had a cool experimental vibe, and I really wanted to put it to, do you know the video game Portal?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It looks
Yeah, so I
similar.
wanted, yeah, yeah, I got that vibe from it, so I wanted to put it to Portal music, and I thought this will be great. Like I'll have some creepy Portal music playing, and that'll be a good vibe. And then when I went to actually look for Portal music that I could use, the place that I always looked at, OC Remix, Overclocked Remix, they only had one Portal song, and it was this like happy Christmas Portal
Right. I was
song.
about to say it's like Christmas
Oh,
song. It's so funny.
yeah, so I should have looked for a song before I chose that.
Oh,
Whatever, it'll have to do.
wait. Wait.
So yeah, that
You.
was
Sorry, you bugged there. Can you repeat that after Christmas song?
yeah, yeah. So I had to compromise with it and just pick that happy Christmas song for this otherwise very like grungy and experimental video.
it's
And
it's
I
an
should have,
interesting contrast there.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't intentional. It just happened, and I was kind of salty about it. But whatever.
Yeah.
And then for the oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, it's alright. Continue.
Okay. For the second Tricks of the Month video, I was kind of bouncing between a few different themes, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually I settled on line versus cascade. I really love that idea. The idea that some balls just travel in perfect lines and other balls have that kind of nice cascade
Sometimes,
parabola to it.
sometimes it's just like illusional cascade, but still look like a cascade since it's going like crossing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
technically, doing three in one hand is not like cascade, but it's like illusional cascade. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to think a lot about how I wanted to portray that. So like whenever you have that kind of thing, you need to decide what are the rules. So if I throw a ball on an angle, so it's going to do this kind of thing, but then I step around and I catch it in the same hand, like does that count as a line or does that count as a cascade? Because it's the same hand, but the shape is a cascade.
Yeah. Visually, it's a cascade, but it's an actual line. Yeah.
Yeah, from a site swap perspective, it's a line. From a visual perspective, it's cascade. So I thought a lot about that, and eventually I decided, I'm going to make it strictly a visual determination, because, well, for a couple of reasons. The first and the biggest reason is I do line versus cascade as a stage performance as well, and I like it to be interesting to everybody. So
Yeah.
if if you're performing for someone who might not be familiar with site swap, they are going to be so confused by, by the idea of like, oh no, that's actually a line because it's caught in the same hand. They're like, that's not what a line means. It's like, well, if you think about the site swap, it's like, oh no, I
You
don't want
lost
to.
them. You lost them.
Yeah. Yeah, and same thing for the tricks of the month. To me, the tricks of the month has to be both something that you are very like is unique to you, but then also it needs to be something that is understandable and interesting to I'll say very casual jugglers who might not know
Yes.
side swap, who might not know theory or whatever. So yeah, I
I
made that
think
decision very
I think you made
uh,
a great
deliberately.
compromise between the two. I think it's awesome for sideswap geeks looking at this. It's sometimes it's like crazy sideswap, like your four columns, like swapping hands like this. Some people are just gonna be, oh, it's just a mess, like you just switching hands. But the the nerds, the nerds behind this, they're gonna know it's so much sideswap, like 5-3. Then you're gonna move. Then oh my god, yeah,
Yeah, and I'm glad you caught that. That's one of my favorite parts. I don't know. I liked a lot of that video, but I really do like four ball Boston mess and the idea that if you throw a 5-3, you can switch which version of four ball
right.
Boston mess you're doing. And ah, Josh Mermelstein helped me work out a path that you could do to go through every single version of four ball
Right,
Boston
that looks
mess
so
doing that
confusing.
transition.
I feel like at some point I'll just like reflex catch and it's gonna mess up the whole pattern. How do you all know which height? Because at some point you gotta go all the way there and there's like two balls in the
Yeah.
middle. There's one there, one there. How do you even calculate this? You're like, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
you have to learn all of those different versions by themselves first, and then you have to practice every transition, and then you can stitch it all together. It's uh
Just for fun,
it's pretty fun.
just for fun. How much time did that specific trick took you to film?
That one wasn't bad. That one was probably just like a couple minutes.
Oh, because you
There,
practiced a lot before.
yeah. Yeah, someday I want to have one take of just going through all of the four ball Boston mess variations because I think that, sometimes you hear an idea and you think the juggling world needs this. To me, the juggling world needs a video with all of the four ball Boston mess versions. And I imagine this as in like a field of lavender or something like this, just like a really relaxed, chill. Here are all the four ball Boston mess variations. Because I think when you learn four ball Boston mess, a lot of people after learning that will say, like, wait, I guess there are different versions of this.
Mm-hmm.
And the very next question is like, how many different versions of it, and
Is there
like, what do they look like?
wait? Correct me if I'm wrong, but is there 16 versions of this?
I don't actually remember.
There was a
Um,
lot. There was a lot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm not gonna embarrass myself by saying wrong things here, but
Y'all can check in the commentary video. He said it. Yeah.
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 So
But a part of this video, the last part when you did like crazy Temoto side swap, like there's some like four ball inverted box, then one on top, then
yeah,
even color coded and stuff. Everything is just like so visually mind blowing. It's crazy. I really like that.
thank you. I think it's one of those things that when a beginner watches it, they're like, "Oh, look, the lines make sense." And they can appreciate it on that level. Or
Right.
like when they watch the four ball Boston mess transitions, they're like, "Oh yeah, they all stayed in columns. That's good." And they can appreciate that. And then when an intermediate or advanced juggler watches it, they're like, "Oh man, that is nasty."
Exactly that. Yeah.
So yeah, I like to appeal to those two groups.
I think you have a preference for high low around inverted box since you did in the two trick of the month video. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first really hard pattern that I ever learned.
Really.
A lot of people, oh man, back in the day, people on Juggling would be like, "Oh, how hard can three balls really get? Like it's never going to be as hard as any five, even a five ball cascade." And there was this big argument that was happening, and like me and Dan Barron and Michael Falkov were like, "No, no, it can be hard," and a lot of other people were like, "Pfft, whatever." Um, so yeah, high-low around inverted box. I would say it was the first pattern that I learned that was definitely harder. The first three ball pattern that I learned that was definitely harder than a five ball cascade. And I don't even think it's close. So
No,
I'm
it's
really
not
quite proud of
close.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm proud of that pattern. That pattern put me in physio twice, learning it. I like blew out my elbows pretty hard, and oh,
I'm
but it's
lucky,
totally worth it.
crossing fingers. Right now I'm practicing it a lot. Right now I got nothing because I'm practicing like sort of safely, but yeah. I remember when, like I said, I started like with Taylor Tries tutorial, then went like on the Discord and discovered so much sideswap and geek stuff. I was mind blown, right? So then I got introduced to like your match against Casper and your trick of the month. There's so much like awesome content with you, and then I saw your high low around inverted box. Then the world record, you did like 10 rounds.
Yeah.
Bro, I was fantasizing on that trick for so long. I I literally I learned the box, then I went to inverted box, then directly to high low around inverted box.
That's rough.
And I learned it though. In like a
You
month,
did.
I was always practicing for it. And just one day it clicked. I had like I don't know if the one watching knows how it looks. Hold on. Let's show it. Let's show them. Yeah. So the pattern looks like a high-low inverted box. So like this. Nice. But the swap, instead of being like this, it's like really over the ball in the middle. Yeah. Here goes nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even that is not high enough. So the first time I had this, I had the first like this over, then into inverted box. I jumped everywhere, bro. I was so hyped about it. Yeah, let's
Oh,
fix it.
that's great. Yeah, it's a banger of a pattern, and it's good to see other people practicing it.
Yeah, I think there should be more people practicing it. It's actually a uh, it's actually a trick we should push further.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. Uh, is there something we haven't talked about yet that you want to mention? You mentioned before beanbags. There's a story you want to tell us about your beanbags.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are these are the bean bags that I use these days. Super vibrant, like them a lot, and they were not easy to get because for a while nobody really used plastic pellet bean bags. Like for a while it was millet all the way, and then some places started thinking about plastic pellets. Other times there were like custom versions that you could get. For a while, Doug Sayers used, maybe he still uses, bean bags filled with like chickpeas because so many jugglers became allergic to millet just through overexposure.
All right.
You know, you spend several hours with like little dust pellets of millet going into your nose all the time, and you're going to develop some kind of sensitivity to it. So my wife, who started juggling earlier than me and like went to festivals earlier than me, she started developing a millet allergy, and I eventually did as well. And this was a real problem because at the time we were doing some duo acts,
Right.
and we're not going to pass with something that she's allergic to. Like it caused terrible problems. So I found out about a company called Drop Props, and I'd actually won a set of drop props from a raffle. And it's like, these could work. These are actually kind of nice. They were plastic pellet filled, and they were very much like these. So some kind of outer canvas, plastic pellets inside. And as I started juggling them, I was like, wow, I actually like these more than anything else I've ever juggled. And I juggled like all of the popular ones. So like the Bag Lady, G Balls, Sport Co. And they're all like they're all really good, don't get me wrong, but this kind just suited my juggling a lot more. I think it made some sacrifices in a catch to make gains on the throw.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is the throw is just so perfect with these. There's like practically or almost no variability in the throw. It's got the precision of like almost a stage ball or an MMX or something like that. It sacrifices a little bit of the catch because of the plastic. It does tend to be a little bit more elastic. So these do have a tendency to like bounce out of your hand a
Yeah.
little bit more than a millet filled ball. But that was a trade-off that I was willing to do, and I was, that was fine. So we did an act or two with those beanbags, and we're like, yeah, this is really good, and I started liking them even more than all of the others. So I asked if I could. I went to buy some of those drop props, and then Sarah Smith, the person who made drop props, was like, Mike, I've been looking to sponsor someone for these, and I think your juggling like fits well with what I'm looking for. So, I'll just give you these. And oh, this is great. I'm so happy. So
Are those
if you look at,
exactly the same he gave you, or those are new ones?
so it's a bit of a story.
All
I
right,
know it's a long story, but I'll get there, I
all
promise.
right, all right.
So this went on for a couple years, and every so often Sarah would send me new props, and I'd be very excited. And then Sarah got like a real person job and stopped making props. It's like,
Oh,
oh no,
yeah.
oh, this is the worst. So I was like, do you have any more that I can buy? And she's like, no, sorry, they're all sold. So I went around to festivals, and whenever I saw someone juggling drop props, I would try to buy them off of them. And I managed to buy a few of them, but that would only last me. They last a long time, but I was juggling pretty hard, so that was probably only going to last me like 2 or 3 years.
Wait,
So
quick question. Did you ever buy like drop props for like famous jugglers? Do you have like famous jugglers equipment there?
no, thankfully, drop props wasn't like super widespread.
Yeah.
So I think I was the only reasonably well-known juggler who used them. Um, which also made it nice because when you go to a festival, you're like, oh no, are these my props? Are these someone else's props? No, no. With drop props, you more or less knew
It's yours,
which
yeah.
one. Yeah. So anyway, she stopped making these, and I'm like, okay, I've got like 2 or 3 years before I'm gonna need new props. So I asked around some of my friends who did sewing,
Hmm.
and I eventually found someone named Nikki who is now the maker of these things, and we like reverse engineered how to make drop props. So I took one of
Yeah,
my old drop props and I
yeah,
cut it
if you
open.
cannot have drop props, make your own drop props. That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Sarah was very helpful. Like she didn't tell us exactly how it was made at the beginning, but when we were like, "Okay, Sarah, we're pretty sure it's this." And she'd be like, "Yeah, okay, you got it." Like, "Okay, great." So, yeah, eventually we made those and we made a couple like little changes, but for the most part they're very, very similar to drop props. The shape of the plastic pellet that we use is a little bit different, so it actually doesn't bounce as much as drop props did. So that's, I think, generally nice.
Yes.
But uh, but yeah, so now we make them. They're called wild juggling beanbags. This is the oh shoot, what's the name of this model? I don't remember. Jaguars. This is the Jaguar model, and
Is there some
yeah,
place?
it's
Is there some place where we can buy them
soon.
soon? All right.
Yeah, right now, if you want to buy them, just send me a message on Instagram or something
Hold
like
on,
that.
I'm doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
No. Yeah. I think since I've been fun fact, I went to the dollar store because I wanted to do numbers, and I saw like okay, it's like massively underfilled beanbags, like for a hacky sack. Even I think it's a hacky sack at this point. Like, and I tried doing some tricks, and I'm really liking it. So maybe I'm gonna look forward buying like some good quality beanbags ones. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. My God. Yeah. So yeah, that's that sounds awesome. Uh.
Oh, I guess one other thing that I forgot to mention with the
Yeah.
weekly Temoto was that one of the goals was to, of course, make Temoto a thing. Another goal is to make more people do a certain pattern, and that certain pattern is going to be the last week of weekly Temoto. So I'm hoping that,
Do you think I can do it? Cause I don't know
yeah,
if
yeah,
you, I don't know if y'all know, but I've been doing every single bonuses and every single call rounds since there. I'm actually really scared to face a super hard one. I wanna have the 52 weeks straight.
you'll definitely be able to do the core one. The bonus one, I don't know. There might even be two bonuses. The second bonus, if I can actually get it by then, I'll be really happy about. And I am very confident that no one else in the world has ever done the second bonus.
Send it to me right now so I can practice in advance. Cause here's the thing, you gotta learn it in 1 week. Like right now,
Yeah.
you gotta take like a year to learn it. Oh my god, this is gonna be a hard one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the second bonus I don't expect. Maybe if Hovard is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna throw my hat into the ring. I think he'd be able to do it. I know he's worked on it a little bit. Neither of us have qualified it yet, but that would be pretty cool. If anybody else gets the second bonus, that'd be hype. But
So
anyway,
you
hmm?
gotta offer a prize or something to the one who gets the second bonus. No,
Yeah.
no,
I mean, who knows? Maybe.
it'd be funny.
But anyway, what I was gonna say there was I definitely didn't make up the weekly trend, even among juggling. I wasn't the first person to bring it in there. Mark Williams and Emma Hornell, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. They did the, I think they called it the Bramson Roll Challenge, and they did an entire year of Bramson Roll variations with hoops,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really hype. Everybody was really excited about it. So near the end of last year, I wrote to Mark being like, "Hey, I want to do a similar thing because your thing was super hype." And then he gave me some good tips on how to do that well. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to follow all of the tips because just life happens. But I've been trying, and his feedback on it, feedback? I don't know. His initial advice was super super useful. So
So
big thanks to him and Emma for running that last
right,
year.
so that's how A and B came together when you wanted
Yeah,
for people to learn the actual term and from the hype that the weekly challenges got both, and it gets hashtag weekly Tomoto on Instagram. Hashtag,
yeah.
yeah. It's an awesome trend. Yeah, I like it. Uh, what should we expect from Mike Moore in the future? What's your what, what's your future stuff?
Yeah, so within the next few years, you can expect a tutorial series that'll cover like my goal is 52 boxes. So 52 tutorials, I think that would be really cool. And it would take you from box to essentially like the end of weekly Temoto. So I think that would be cool. It'll also be like very I don't mean to promise this because a lot can happen in a few years, but it would also be very intertwined. I find a problem with a lot of intermediate and advanced tutorials is that they assume that you have prerequisites
Mm-hmm.
and you might not have them, and maybe there aren't even any tutorials on those prerequisites because it's just so far down the line. So the idea with my series would be that there would be a video covering the prerequisite for literally everything. And that would be nice. Um, as for other stuff, there are a couple old videos of mine that I really want to make sequels to. One of them is inverted sprung site swaps. Like that, I end that video being like, "Yeah, I'll do more soon," and that was like 3 years ago or 4 years ago or something.
But you
So
did a single inverted sprung cascade side swap in my video. I did a collab. You did a crazy side swap there. Yeah,
yeah,
that was a cool exclusivity exclusive thing. That was awesome.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think inverted sprung site swaps, they have so much potential and they're like other site swaps. They're really good to train you to do other types of patterns in that base pattern. So there are a few that I really want to lock down before I post, like 5511. Inverted sprung 5511 is really cool. I think do I have that right? I think I have that right. It averages well, so I think that's right.
So is it
Um,
just like two ups and then swap underneath?
yeah.
Cause fun fact, I tried this one yesterday. Like,
Oh yeah?
since I'm doing, when I'm doing like the fake reverse sprung cascade, cause I'm doing like
Yeah.
this, yeah. So I'm doing the two ups, then I swap under. So I yesterday I tried to do this one with the normal sprung cascade with two ups, then I swap under, but I never figured out how to throw after with the two fives coming back. But yeah, fun fact, I tried it yesterday.
So yeah, you have to do two swaps under
Two swaps?
in order. Yeah, two
Oh yeah,
swaps.
cause
Yeah.
there's an additional one. Yeah, initial
Yeah.
one. Then you, oh yeah, some hard stuff,
Yeah.
right?
And it's something that's like not terrible to get a flash of, at least in my opinion. Like you can get a flash of it okay. But then to run it, oh man, it's a real beast. There are a few other ones like inverted sprung 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great pattern. I love that one. I'd really like to do some kind of inverted sprung 5, 5, 5, 0, 0 with like something cool in the 0, 0. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do a
360.
360
Yeah, no, do a
because
360. That's no,
I
that's
don't really like 360s,
mm.
but it might be something like no, I won't I
Yeah,
won't spoil it.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, a a sequel to inverted sprung site swaps, hopefully. That's the more feasible one. And then I'd really like to get a sequel to Raging Against Inadequacy, which it would be called Raging Against Complacency because it's I don't know if everybody feels this, but I had a kid recently, and when you have a kid, it can be very tempting to then offload all of your hopes and dreams onto the kid and
Right.
kind of be like, oh, well, I don't need to accomplish anything for the rest of my life because, like, I've got a kid to do that. And that's not fair to the kid. And that's probably not very good for the parent either from a psychological point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So I did certainly feel that draw for a little while. And it did lead me to be complacent for a little bit, but now I feel like I need to rage against complacency. So maybe maybe that'll be the next thing.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for all this. This was a
Yeah,
lot
you're
of fun,
welcome.
a lot of cool information. I hope you guys liked it. This was my
Yeah,
first podcast. Maybe it was up there with the good ones. Maybe it was cool to to participate. Yeah. Yeah, so I
yeah, and you can follow this podcast in all of the places you normally follow podcasts. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
it's going to be on
Like,
YouTube.
okay, like, comment, subscribe, and bell this so that you never miss an episode.
Yeah, sure. And I really hope to have more guests on this podcast. Could be really fun. So if y'all want to be in this podcast, if y'all any jugglers or anyone, message me on Instagram. There is my name. And also point. This is no yours. Don't
I'm pointing
yours
this way.
under yours under. And follow Mike's Instagram Artifaxium
Yeah.
for the ending of Weekly Tomoto. So yeah, have fun guys. Have fun juggling.
All right. Take care, everyone.